Right now, when political power collides with public health, it's more than just a policy fight. We'll examine the battle over trust, science, and who to believe when the next crisis hits. Also, researchers here in Atlanta may have unlocked a new weapon against cancer. Find out how this could change the outlook for patients facing one of the toughest diagnoses. And they're bright, they're bold, and they are weaving their way across Georgia. But the story behind the golden webs might surprise you. We'll share what you need to know about the Joro spider. This is The Take. Hello and welcome. I'm Cheryl Preheim in for my friend Chesley McNeil today, and this is The Take. We go beyond the headlines and we look at how and why the stories are impacting your community. Experts share what they know, and we always have a little fun too. But let's start overseas. Today, President Trump is meeting with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. They're at the British leader's rural retreat of Chequers. The two leaders were expected to talk about trade, technology, and geopolitical issues, including a new technology agreement between the UK and the US. All of this as President Trump is wrapping up his unprecedented second state visit to the United Kingdom. NBC's Alice Barr will have more for us on today's meeting between the two leaders in a live report from London. That's coming up for you in just about 10 minutes. Last night, there was plenty of pomp and pageantry as the president and first lady were guests of honor at a dinner hosted by King Charles III. It was at Windsor Castle. In a pre-dinner speech, the king talked about the close bond between Britain and the United States. President Trump also mentioned that nation's bond and called this second state visit to the UK one of the highest honors of his life. That bond has been called the special relationship, and it touches on the close political, diplomatic, economic, military, even cultural ties between the United States and the United Kingdom. Here to examine more about that special relationship and its condition today is Emory political science professor and frequent analyst here, friend of the show, Andra Gillespie. Good to see you, Andra.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. There is a deep history in this special relationship between the two countries. From your perspective, why has it endured? Talk a little bit about the endurance and that history.
Well, we are sitting in a former British colony, and so that relationship between the United States and Great Britain has, of course, been strong, despite the fact that the United States seceded from Great Britain. We have maintained not just geopolitical alliances after we kind of settled our relationship with the UK, but we've also maintained common cultural alliances, and so that Anglo-American relationship has been very important. It's sealed by a common language, and it's sealed by familiar culture. So while there are differences between British and American culture, we tend to be very legible with each other, and we have forged a strong geopolitical bond through our allyship, especially in the last century, with working together in both the First and the Second World War.
As you were talking, we're seeing pictures from many administrations over the years, over the generations, that really reflect that ongoing political connection. I'm curious how the connection, though, is being tested right now with President Trump, especially as he launched tariffs against so many nations, including the UK.
Yes, well, I mean, President Trump has not followed the script that most American presidents have typically followed. So we have seen that in terms of the approach that he has taken to Ukraine, which has sometimes put him at odds strategically with our traditional allies. And we also haven't seen that with respect to trade. So, every country has had to renegotiate their trade deals, even if they've had long personal geopolitical relationships with us. I think King Charles was alluding to that in his toast last night at the state dinner, where he talked about that longstanding relationship. And you could very clearly see that the pomp and circumstance of the visit with the monarch was going to kind of presage the conversations that I expect he's going to be having with the prime minister today about issues related to trade and geopolitics, among other things.
You make such a good point, because there's the outward ceremonial part of that visit, but behind the scenes there's also a lot of conversations and a lot of things going on. Trump and Starmer have their differences. A very conservative president, a more liberal-leaning prime minister. Do you see the current state of affairs as maybe the toughest test to that, as they have these closed door conversations today?
Well, I mean, this is going to be sort of the latest in sort of an ongoing conversation between Trump and Starmer. So, over a few months ago, Starmer came to the United States. They ironed out, I guess, the framework for a trade deal. And there have also been conversations about the war in Ukraine, and Starmer, amongst other European allies, has tried to, really convince President Trump to continue to support Ukraine and to be more forceful about that vis-a-vis Vladimir Putin. I expect that that conversation is going to continue, and there's still some details about sort of the trade deal between the United States and Great Britain that are still being ironed out. And so I expect that the goal is for there to be
Let's give Andra's computer a moment to try to catch up. Andra, if you can hear me, your shot's frozen temporarily, but I think the point you're making about alliances is so important. Britain has really for a long time been central to the overall strategy for the U.S. So there are questions about whether it's slipping more into a supporting role. And globally, things are shifting and changing pretty rapidly. Andra was talking about even the UK trying to shift the way the United States right now through the Trump administration is looking at supporting the war in Ukraine and all of those things too. So in a world of shifting alliances and global uncertainty, we'll continue to look at how that relationship between the U.S. and the UK is still a key for the United States and for the entire world. We have much more on the take for you coming up right after the break. Welcome back to The Take. More layers now as we continue our coverage of President Trump's second state visit to the United Kingdom. Beyond all of the glitz and the glamour, there is still serious work to be done between the president and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. NBC's Alice Barr is traveling with the president. She joins us now from outside Buckingham Palace. Alice, let's start with that meeting today at Chequers between Trump and Starmer. Do we know any of the key points that we expect to come from that discussion?
Good morning, Cheryl. Yes, so that meeting has been underway, and we actually just heard from President Trump and Prime Minister Keir Starmer sitting down together and speaking about a new tech pact that they inked right there in front of the cameras. This is an effort to advance AI, to advance nuclear technologies, and to join together to strengthen the business ties between the U.S. and the UK. And President Trump spoke about that as a means of strengthening the long-standing alliance between these two countries. It's sort of a future phase, if you like, for a long enduring alliance. That is really central to what's being discussed today between these two leaders. They're talking about refining the U.S.-UK trade deal, but there are also a number of top American tech CEOs that are on hand for a reception that's going on at Chequers, the country resident of the UK Prime Minister. A little bit of an unusual retinue for this kind of a state visit, but it points to how very central the business relationship really is in terms of everything that's going on, and how that could potentially serve as a pivot point for advancing some of the political issues that certainly the UK, many European allies are looking to President Trump to back them on if there is kind of some of the economic partnership and benefits that go along with those discussions that can serve as a helpful carrot.
And as you mention all of that, Alice, I think it's very important context to keep in mind that this is a very conservative president, a more liberal-leaning prime minister. It does seem, though, that they've been able to find a little common ground here. Are we seeing that, from your perspective, in the state visit?
Yeah, it's a really interesting relationship to watch, Keir Starmer and President Trump. As you noted, they are on different sides of the political spectrum, and that can often be very difficult to overcome really in any setting, certainly with President Trump. We just saw them sitting side by side, exchanging compliments, and I think Prime Minister Starmer has made it an effort from the beginning of his time at Downing Street to kind of go on a charm offensive with President Trump. And you can observe the times when he's trying to sort of lean into the relationship, the times when he maybe gently puts a foot down in some areas. They're about to have a press conference before long here, and that's going to be be an interesting test because there are some really important points where they do differ sharply, particularly in the war in Gaza. That's something that we expect to come up, something we've been hearing protesters certainly speaking about. And Prime Minister Starmer is preparing to formally recognize a Palestinian state very shortly after President Trump departs at the end of this visit. That is something that President Trump is staunchly against, something they're likely to get questions about. And so it'll be interesting to observe, is there friction, is there tension noticeable in their responses? They're certainly not lockstep, but they have made efforts to try to have a smoother relationship in service of some of the very important issues that the UK wants to keep, again, the US on sides over.
I really like how you put that charm offensive. And in politics, those connections are so key. I'm curious, from your spot there on the ground, Alice, what's been the feeling around you? Are you getting a sense of the reception just from the general public there in the UK? Here in the US, we've seen some images of both protesters and supporters.
Yeah, I've been able to speak to some of the people, particularly when we were outside Windsor Castle yesterday, where if you think there was a charm offensive that Keir Starmer has been sort of waging with President Trump, it was, every level of charm, of opulence, of splendor that you can think of, certainly for the royal family. And that is not coincidental that effort was, to sort of set the table for what needed to be the nitty-gritty political discussion today, to have that gloss of the royal meeting yesterday. But the people that I was speaking to, there were supporters of President Trump who said that they want to see, that they like seeing discussions in the U.S. about what's happening in the U.K. For instance, there were really big anti-immigrant protests over the weekend here in London, and Elon Musk called in virtually to kind of encourage some of those. J.D. Vance, the vice president, spoke about that, and they said they like that. They want that kind of intervention from the president. There were protesters who, though, were somewhat frustrated with the royal treatment that the president is getting, though they said they understand that the UK needs to work with President Trump. They'd like it to perhaps be a little bit less over the top than some of what we've seen here.
Really interesting perspective. Alice Barr, always appreciate your time and your insight. Thanks so much. Plenty more for you coming up after the break. You're watching The Take. All right, let's dive into a topic so many people are talking about right now. More and more, what you post online can follow you straight into the workplace. Employers aren't just checking resumes anymore. They are scrolling through your social media feeds. And as we've seen in recent days and weeks, those posts are sometimes costing people job offers or even their current positions. A Career Builder survey found 7 in 10 employers use social media or online searches to screen job candidates. More than half of those employers found content on social media that led them not to hire a candidate, and a third have reprimanded or fired a current employee because of something they found on their social media. 70% of employers use social media or online searches to screen job candidates. 57% of those employers found content on social media that led them not to hire someone. 34% have reprimanded, as we mentioned, a current employee because of something they found. So in the last couple of weeks, we've seen employees across the country lose their jobs after controversial or offensive posts surfaced online. So where is the line between free expression and employer rights? Let's bring in Deepa Das Acevedo, an associate professor of law at Emory University, to help us sort it all out and what's legally at stake here. Thank you so much for the time. This is a conversation I'm just hearing out and about in the community a lot right now.
It's happening everywhere, it seems like, and in all kinds of industries and workplaces.
So why does what you post on social media matter so much to employers?
Well, employers are aware that there is a lot of bleed through between your personal life and your professional life. So they're concerned that anything that you say, even if you're saying it in a personal capacity, and even if it violates no law, will be associated with them and will create disruptions in the workplace or legal liabilities for them.
So both when they're deciding to hire you and once you're already on the job, those kind of thoughts are going to both weigh in pretty heavily?
Yeah, this is something that really becomes relevant before you've even begun the job and stays relevant for as long as you're in the job. Unfortunately, there's no definite cutoff for this, which means that in a sense, everything that you do becomes part of who you are as an employee, not simply who you are as a person.
I overheard a conversation at the grocery store that was so interesting. Someone was talking about this in the checkout line, and they were saying, I wonder if we're going to start seeing lawsuits that people file who were fired, saying that, you know, they have the legal right to express their feelings. What legal protections, if any, do employees have when it comes to their personal social media accounts, especially in the private sector? Where does the First Amendment apply or not directly apply?
Well, so the easy answer to that is that the First Amendment does not apply against private sector employers. The First Amendment is a limit on governmental authority to regulate and limit speech. It is not a limit on private workplace employers. So essentially, private employers have the right to fire people for most reasons related to their speech. Not everything, but this is what we call the at-will rule of employment, which means that an employer can fire you at will for good reason, bad reason, or no reason at all. And that includes things that you might say on your social media.
At will, an important clause to know. So from a legal standpoint, how much do employers have room to discipline or terminate over those kinds of comments?
In many states, in many industries, private sector employers are virtually unfettered in the disciplinary or termination actions they can take against employees for comments that are made in the employee's personal capacities that break no law, if the employer finds it displeasing, embarrassing, or disruptive. It's really quite a wide-ranging power. In some sectors, in some states, there are statutory limitations that might apply to private employers. And it's important to remember that there are reasons that private employers can't discipline or terminate employees, such as anything that has to do with race, sex, national origin, and a few other protected categories. And where those protected categories intersect with a speech act by an employee or a social media post by an employee, then there might be some limitations on the employer's ability to act, and the employee might have a claim. But otherwise, the general baseline rule is that a private sector employer has pretty unfettered ability to discipline or terminate employees for their speech.
All right, important point to end on. We really appreciate the guidance and the insight there. Deepa Das Acevedo, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
All right, don't go anywhere. We have more of the take coming up after the break. There is a growing conversation about former CDC Director Susan Menarez's testimony yesterday at a Senate hearing. She discussed her departure from the Atlanta-based agency and her warnings about political interference in vaccine policy. Menarez's testimony described how such influence undermines the CDC's ability to respond to outbreaks, how she says it threatens public trust and has left the agency weakened by vacancies and safety concerns.
On August 25th, I could have stayed silent, agreed to the demands, and no one would have known. What the public would have seen were scientists dismissed without cause and vaccine protections quietly eroded, all under the authority of a Senate-confirmed director with unimpeachable credentials. I could have kept the office, the title, but I would have lost the one thing that cannot be replaced, my integrity.
That moment really highlights a bigger fight. Can the CDC keep science above politics? Time to discuss this with Professor Stephen Patrick, the chair of Emory's Department of Health Policy and Management. He's also a former senior policy advisor for the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
First of all, can you just share your overall take on the hearing?
Well, it was an extraordinary day. And I do think as we're thinking about how the CDC can be effective in talking about vaccines and protecting the public, what we heard yesterday were certainly reasons to be concerned about recommendations that may be coming out even just this week.
From your perspective here in Atlanta, a community that watched a shooting happen targeting the CDC campus, those employees going back and having feelings about that, then there's more turmoil. How does this all affect the morale among career scientists and staff, not just at the CDC, but maybe overall?
Yeah, I think that is worrisome. These are public servants and scientists who work to make people healthier. And, most of these are not political people. And as we, see this erosion of science in CDC and beyond, I do worry about the signals that sends to existing public servants and people who would be public servants. So I do think that's worrisome as well.
Former Director Menares told senators she was fired because she refused political directives tied to vaccine policy from Secretary Kennedy. Talk about the implications for the CDC's credibility when scientific recommendations risk maybe an override. This is a highly emotional conversation happening out in communities right now.
It is. We polled Americans, a sample of, a representative sample of Americans, what they thought of the recent change to ACIP. This is the committee where vaccines are reviewed, the science is discussed. That's what most of the hearing was about yesterday. We asked the public, what do you think about the recent changes where essentially all the people on ACIP were fired and replaced by different folks, and many of those are vaccine skeptics. What we heard from Americans was about half of them would find ACIP's findings less credible. That's worrisome. And as we walk through this, I'm also a pediatrician. And as I think about how I make recommendations to families, where do I rely on information? I am worried about what's going to come out of ACIP today and tomorrow. I am mindful that there are large organizations like the American Academy of Pediatrics who always make recommendations on vaccines. That's where I'm going to be looking towards a steadying force, because I'm not sure what's going to come out of ACIP this week.
What do you feel is the single most important step for families to consider as they are trying to navigate a kind of a crush of information and make choices that are best for the people they love?
Talk to your pediatrician. I think that's the best advice I can give. We heard in the hearing yesterday really compelling story from Senator Cassidy, who chairs the HELP committee. He is also a hepatologist. So one of the things where he gave a pretty compelling story about why hepatitis B vaccine makes a big difference for newborns. Those are the patients I care for. So having that individual conversation with your pediatrician or your child's doctor is really important. They are the ones who can help you interpret all the things that are coming in. Parents have so many things coming at them right now. Social media, talking about vaccines, that's been a problem for a while. But now we have unclear guidance coming from CDC, and that's really unprecedented. So have that conversation with your child's doctor.
All right, well, your information is so helpful. We appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Happy to.
All right, much more coming up on The Take. We'll be right back. Take a look at this guy. They're back, and in bigger numbers than ever. The bright-colored Joro spiders are spinning massive webs across Georgia this season. Researchers are warning their population may be doubling each year. They're not a danger to us, but they could be pushing out some other native species. Let's find out what this all means with Andy Davis, an assistant research scientist at UGA's Odum School of Ecology. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi there, pleasure to be here.
Those yellow markings are so distinct. What makes this spider so unique?
Oh boy, it's one of the things that everybody notices about them right off is that they're so big. This time of year, especially in the fall, they start to get really, really big, almost the size of your palm. And their webs are also gigantic. And they can even double up. And so you can have multiple spiders in multiple webs all connecting. So the first thing you see about these spiders is that they're enormous.
Yeah, I have 3 boys. If one of my boys brings that to me, I'm like, okay, buddy, we need to look up and see if this one's okay. This one's not dangerous, but spreading quickly. How quickly?
They're spreading in 2 different ways. And so right now they're spreading ones on their own by ballooning as little babies. People have probably heard this in the news. These spiders can actually fly when they're really young. The young babies will send up a thread of silk into the air, and that will catch the wind, and then they'll sort of float off on their own. Now, they can travel a fair distance on their own. However, they're also spreading by hitchhiking on cars at this point, which is spreading them much faster. And so right now, they've been spreading to nearby states, Alabama, the Carolinas, Tennessee, also Florida, but then also some have been found as far north as Boston last year and Baltimore as well. So they're definitely spreading pretty fast right now.
Yeah, covering a lot of ground, and people see those kind of golden webs across porches, trails, power lines. I know it's a nuisance for a lot of people. Should homeowners and communities be trying to remove them?
It's a bit of a losing battle, unfortunately, because if you do that one summer, they'll just be back the next summer. And so and because they're not really harmful to people or your pets, my recommendation is people kind of have to learn to get to live with them if you can. I know that's a tall order for some people who are afraid of spiders, but they're really not going to harm you, and they're actually quite beautiful to look at. And so it's hard to do, but I would suggest maybe just try to get along with them.
Yeah, got to get our mind right about what we're looking at there. Do you see the Joro spider as a genuine threat to the ecosystem?
Oh, that's a great question, and one that is still being addressed by researchers right now. I'll say it's probably too soon to know for sure what the full impact will be. We do have some studies coming out now. One has shown some pretty severe negative impacts, but then another one has shown not so severe impacts. And so it might be too soon to call this situation as overall negative or neutral at this point. We do know for sure that these spiders are not harming the trees that they're on or your porches. And so as far as invasive species go, this one is not as bad as some of the other ones.
All right, I like that positive perspective. Before we let you go really quickly, we have 30 seconds left, just wondering, is there anything that can be done to stop the massive growth trajectory that we're seeing of these Joros?
Unfortunately, no. They're spreading far beyond. It's like the horses have left the barn, and we can't close the barn door at this point. So at this point, there are millions of them on the landscape here in Georgia and surrounding states. And so at this point, there's not really much we can do, which is a little defeating, but they're spreading pretty fast, and one female can lay 1,000 eggs. And so it's really hard to control these things. And so that's why I recommend we can try to learn to live with them.
1,000 eggs, we got to learn to live together in peace. All right, Andy Davis, thanks for the perspective. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Let's take you outside where the Joros live. Kind of soupy skies there over Rome, but no wind. You see the flag is still there in the foreground. And a little bit of traffic there through downtown. We'll have much more on the weather throughout the day here on 11Alive News, but clouds kind of overlaying Rome right now. All right, doctors in Atlanta are leading the way on a new cancer treatment that doesn't just fight tumors, it finds them too. It's called DZ002. It's now in phase 2 trials for pancreatic cancer, and that is one of the toughest cancers to treat. So this dual search and destroy approach could be a game changer for patients. Here with the details is Magda Henry, a professor of chemistry at Georgia State. Thanks for coming on the show.
Good morning, and thank you for having me in your program today.
What makes this different from traditional cancer treatments like chemotherapy or radiation?
Yes, this is a great question. Let me explain to you in simple terms. This treatment, which is designed to be used during surgery, is one agent that combines a dye, which serves as a diagnostic portion, and a drug, which serves as a therapeutic portion. If this dual agent is injected into the human body, the dye will be solely taken by tumor cells and not healthy tissue. It's taken by, so now you have to imagine that you have the tumor containing the dye and containing the drug. So what happened now in operating room, the surgeon can shine light, special light to the tumor, and the dye is going to be activated activated in the tumor and in the tumor site, and the surgeon can see the tumor site very precisely, and also at the same time deliver the anti-cancer drug to the tumor to cause the killing effect. So our invention is to help the surgeon to see the tumor and kill them at the same time without damaging the healthy tissue.
This has tremendous upsides for patients. What does treatment like this mean in terms of side effects and quality of life?
This is a great question because, as I mentioned earlier, that this agent only taken by healthy tissue and not by tumor tissue. So we can have less side effects compared to traditional chemotherapy and immunotherapy and even radiation. Also, this treatment could give a hope for better future for cancer patients and could improve the quality of life for cancer patients, and hopefully one day, if successful in future clinical stages, could save lives.
You know, we saw pictures of you doing research. I know you have spent a tremendous amount of time on this, and the implications for families is what drives that mission. So phase 2 trials are happening now, right? What are the most important things you and your team are watching for in this stage to try to move this forward so it can help more people?
Yes, in phase 2 clinical trial, the trial decided to do it in pancreatic tumors, which is very aggressive tumor and is very hard to treat. So our goal now, we are watching how phase 2 can do and how this trial can help many pancreatic patients. Already other treatment fail with them. So if this is successful, this can take us to the next level. I hope phase 3, and after that, it can be ready for the world. So I'm really very optimistic about it because based on phase 1 clinical trial and phase 2, the data is outstanding.
Well, as you mentioned, this news can provide a lot of hope for the future for many families, so many lives around us touched by cancer. So thank you for the work that you're doing, to you and your team, and thanks for your time here on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good day. A lot more ahead for you on The Take. We'll see you in just a minute. Welcome back. Wall Street keeping a close eye on the Fed as it teases what it'll do next with rates. CNN's Maribel Aber joins us now from the NASDAQ market site in New York on that story and all the financial news you need to know this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Cheryl. Let's start there with the Federal Reserve cutting its benchmark interest rate for the first time since December. The quarter-point cut was aimed at supporting a slowing job market. Now, policymakers signaled more reductions are likely if growth continues to weaken. For consumers, a rate trim is nice, but a quarter point likely won't make a huge dent in mortgage or auto loans yet. Homeowners who refinance now may shave a little off their monthly payment. Credit card rates may tick back, saving a little in monthly interest on any balances owed. Wall Street expects at least 2 more cuts when the Fed meets again in October and December. Spirit CEO Dave Davis says the cuts are needed to lower expenses. The low-budget carrier plans to reduce flights by 25%. The company is also planning to cut jobs. As far as the number of employees that will be affected, the airline said it is discussing it with its workers' labor unions. Spirit had already announced furloughs and demotions of hundreds of pilots. Some flights attendants have taken voluntary unpaid leaves of absence. This comes just weeks after Spirit filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy for the second time in a year. And Target is expanding next-day delivery options ahead of the holiday season. The chain says it's expanding next-day deliveries for online orders to 35 metro areas by the end of October. Delivery is free for orders over $35. Faster delivery options are also available. Target already offers same-day deliveries to more than 80% of the U.S. The retailer says it plans to expand next-day delivery to more than 20 additional metro areas in 2026. And finally, Cracker Barrel expects earnings for its first quarter, which started August 1st, to be significantly below the prior year, partly due to lower traffic. Cracker Barrel reported a drop in customer visits after the backlash over a proposed logo change and renovations. On Wednesday, the restaurant chain said traffic has fallen 8% since August 19th, when it initially changed the logo. The company said if the trend continues, it expects the rest of the first quarter of 2026 financial year to be impacted as well. Cracker Barrel had plans to renovate its restaurants, but had only completed 4 remodels by the time it paused the effort earlier this month. You know, Cheryl, it's the power of your brand. Do you know who your brand ambassadors are? And a lot of them leaned into nostalgia. Did they not get the memo?
Yeah, and they certainly made their voices heard, and the company responded. All right, Maribel, thanks for the update on all of that. We always appreciate the time. All right, don't go anywhere. We have more of the Take for you coming up in just a minute. Taking a look outside right now, pretty hazy over the beautiful city of Atlanta there. If you're looking outside and you're wondering, where's the rain? Just a few people saw pockets of showers. I saw a little lightning yesterday, but we're waiting for some more meaningful rainfall. Georgia is experiencing a rainfall deficit this month. Here to explain more is Dylan Lusk, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Peachtree City. Welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having us.
Oh, I'm so glad you have the time here. How much below normal is Georgia's rainfall when we're looking at September so far?
Yeah, so at least over the past 30 days, we've seen kind of an expansion of the drought across the area. Right now, if we look at, for instance, the Atlanta airport, over the past 30 days, we're about 13% of what our normal average rainfall would be. So to give you some actual numbers, that's like half an inch of rainfall that we've seen in the past 30 days versus what would normally be about 4 inches. So we're definitely lagging a little bit behind in terms of what we would normally see across the metro.
Yeah, we've got some ground to make up. What weather patterns are driving the rainfall deficit, do you think?
We've definitely seen things be just, in general, we've had a lot of kind of drier air that's been in across the area. Yeah. And so that has prevented those like typical afternoon type thunderstorms that we actually finally started to see a little bit over the past couple of days try and make a little bit of a return. Well, we've definitely been in a pattern where things are a little bit drier. And as a result, we're just not seeing the typical rainfall. That being said, also during the fall, or at least as we move into fall, it is typical for us to start to kind of dry out a little bit, and we actually become pretty reliant for seeing like more significant rainfall on things like tropical systems or tropical waves and things like that, pushing that rainfall into the area. And so thankfully, we haven't seen anything like that, but the downside is we're not seeing the rain that we would see otherwise.
Yeah, it's like the pro and con list, right? I don't miss the humidity, but we do need moisture.
Right.
So how close is Georgia to officially being in a drought?
So we've got actually a little sliver as of today. We've got a little bit of a little sliver of the western side of the metro that is officially in a drought. So we do have portions of Georgia that are officially in drought as of today. This is actually the first time that we've seen drought since the fall of 2023 and a little bit of the beginning of 2024. So it's been a little while. Yeah. We're going to have to keep monitoring that, and hopefully we will see a return of some rainfall here over the next couple of days going into the end of next week per se. But if we continue to stay this dry, we can see here in the southeast we're susceptible to what we call flash drought, which is basically a drought that very rapidly tends to develop that's mainly based out of like our vegetation and things like that. So think of trees and the crops and things like that. And so these flash droughts can actually have pretty substantial economic impacts across the area.
Yeah, agriculture is a key for the state economy. As you were talking just before you said that, I was thinking about our ranchers and our farmers out there and the implications for them. How does this stretch of dry weather increase the risk of wildfires heading into the fall burn season?
Yeah, so as I was kind of saying with the flash drought, that tends to affect our vegetation the most. And as we start to lose water from the vegetation, that stuff dries out. Those forests and things across the area and those open fields, that grass, all that stuff, it starts to pretty rapidly dry out as well. And so that increases our wildfire risk as we go into the fall season, which typically tends to be, as I kind of stated before, one of our drier seasons to begin with. So if we're even drier than we would normally be, those kind of fire conditions can definitely increase.
All right. Dylan Lusk, thank you for the insight, and we will all be hoping for a little rain for relief.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. Thanks so much. Let's talk about better work and brighter futures. For one Georgia mom, a new career path has been life-changing, opening doors she never imagined were possible. As part of my Better Work series, I introduce you to Shakita Starks, whose journey from warehouse work to the world of medicine is inspiring others to follow their dream.
Let's check your oxygen saturation.
Every day in the clinic is a step closer to Shakita Stark's next goal. What do you love about medicine?
I love everything about medicine. I get to take care of patients.
Healthcare is a big change from where she started.
I started off as a warehouse worker and ended up in the nursing field, and I found my true passion. I really like taking care of people.
WellStar's Career Care program was the perfect fit for this busy mom of 3. Free training while she worked.
We wanted to take care of all of those things that might be a financial burden, remove that. So it opened up the market to whomever might dream or have courage or confidence to think, I can do this.
Shakita started as a patient tech in the operating room. Now she's a certified nurse's assistant.
We're not just investing in your education and developing you, but we're guaranteeing your placement.
Your systolic number is 119. That's the coffee, girl. You had 2 cups of coffee.
I did.
You did?
I did.
See? I knew it.
Shakita's drive to help others comes from a personal place. Her brother had autism. He was rushed to the hospital with seizures. When someone you love is hurting and needs help, it means everything when somebody shows up.
Nurses came in and they were phenomenal. And that's what's like, I love the fact that they were so caring and attentive to him. And I was like, you know what? I can do that.
And you are doing it, and really doing it in his honor and his legacy.
Yes. I love it.
In her brother's memory and for her family's future, she's already working to do more.
Now, I just enrolled in Chat Tech for my nursing degree.
You've taken one step and you're already thinking about the next.
Yes, you can't stop. You have to keep going, especially when you have little ones and people that's looking up to you. My ultimate goal is to be a nurse.
How much has this career changed your life?
Income-wise, definitely changed a lot. My life in general has definitely changed a lot as well.
For Better Work, Cheryl Preheim, 11Alive News. Shakita's tremendous, and she is helping a lot of people. Career Care through WellStar helps you advance no matter what position you'd like to do in healthcare, and healthcare is a massive need statewide in Georgia. There are jobs open every single day. You can learn more about the program and check out other career opportunities in North Georgia on our website. Just head to 11alive.com/betterwork. Thank you to Career Rise for being our partners. A lot more ahead for you. Don't go anywhere. More Take after the break. Before we go, my final take. Free tuition. That'll get anybody's attention. Emory University makes a bold move, an investment that chips away at one of the biggest barriers for students: debt. Starting in 2026, tuition will be free for students whose families earn $200,000 or less. So think about what this means. For many parents or young people, the conversation around the kitchen table has always started with, how in the world are we going to pay for this? Now for those considering Emory University, that shifts to, is this the right fit, the right school for future possibilities? It's a huge difference. It's part of a $1 billion commitment over the next 4 years, and comes at a time when a growing number of families are already stretched financially thin, and as the federal government is restricting how much people can borrow in federal student loans. So Emory is cutting costs up front, which means less borrowing needed, less stress, and more opportunity. Moves like this are rare. Emory now joins a handful of elite schools like Harvard, MIT, and Penn that have similar programs. For students who qualify, this could be life-changing, opening doors to a world-class education here in Atlanta without a shadow of that crushing debt. And for other universities watching, it just might raise the bar. Hope you have a great day ahead. Thanks for joining us here on The Take.